How does the game of quarterback musical chairs affect the never too early ADP? Is Kyler Murray slipping too far down FFPC draft boards? And what do you do with Michael Thomas in your leagues right now? Plus, the 2021 FFPC Best Ball Tournament $100,000 grand prize winner Conor O'Driscoll joins us to talk about how he built his six-figure squad, what he thinks about Cam Akers' current ADP, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you greetings and salutations to all the Balkaholics, all the Farrelliacs, and welcome you in to the latest episode of the high-stakes fantasy football hour presented by myffpc.com. I'm, of course, your slightly above-average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner, the one, the only, the Farrell Elliott. Farrell, we did a little, pre-production meeting, I guess is what you'd call it, before we kicked off tonight. And my voice was it was terrible today. I don't know what it was, if I was coming down with something or whatever, but I feel like over the course of the last 2 hours, it's made a comeback, and I feel invigorated and ready to attack all the news we had going on this week in fantasy football.
You sound great, Balky, and with a couple of Irishmen on the show tonight, perhaps you've been treating the medicinal aspects of your throat with some very, very needed Irish whiskey. So that or bourbon ought to serve the ticket to get you right back where you need to be.
We're less than a week away from St. Patrick's Day,
Yes,
so
sir.
I've been loading up on my grilled tomatoes, my blood pudding, everything, Guinness and Jameson and what have you. So now this is 2 consecutive weeks on the show. I was outnumbered by Louisville guys last week.
Yes, sir.
I'm outnumbered by Irish guys tonight.
Yes, you are.
Which is really bizarre. In any event, we are here live tonight talking with you on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Tonight we're going to talk about the skill position players and what you need to do with them in FFPC leagues with the Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks. We're going to discuss that. Plus, Conor O'Driscoll, the $100,000 winner in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, is going to join us here in about 10 minutes or so to talk about how he built his six-figure squad. And honestly, you could probably take some of the tips that he's going to give us tonight on the show to what you could be doing in the never too early FFPC Best Ball Tournament. What he thinks about the Cam Akers ADP currently right now. We're going to get into that as well and much more. Want to remind you that the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, $25,000 grand prize. You can get in on that at myffpc.com, as well as cashing in on getting some great deals on some Dynasty Orphans at the FFPC right now. $1 million is at stake in the 2022 FFPC main event. Make sure you're getting in on that. And then, of course, getting in and cashing in on that $35 free credit with the Football Guys Players Championship Early Bird also going on right now. If you want to get into the 12-team closed leagues, we have plenty of slow drafts, live drafts, sit and goes, whatever you want at myffpc.com. And, of course, the Run to Daylight Championship at the KFFSC. And, of course, the Draft Masters available at kffsc.com. Filling up as we speak. Very exciting times for the FFPC, Farrell, as well as the KFFSC.
Balky, yes, and I'm having some exciting times. Just as you speak about the Dynasty Orphans, I picked one up of the $500 variety this week, and I like the team. I like the draft picks, and it was a nice bargain. I would encourage everyone to take a look at that, especially if you haven't played Dynasty. You don't necessarily have to start one from scratch. You can start one, or you can pick one up and rebuild. And with the players we have in this 2022 NFL draft, rebuilding is a wonderful opportunity this year. And then I am now in my fifth. It's the never too early. This is my fifth and perhaps my final team in this contest. And I look forward to asking our guest tonight some ins and outs. I think I will concentrate on strategy to see just some of the things I might be missing and hopefully some of the things I might have done right along the way.
And Connor's going to tell us, and there's no better authority on the subject than Conor O'Driscoll, who will be coming up in a few minutes here. Huge day, or huge week of news, I should say, in the NFL this past week. We're going to kick things off with the blockbuster of all blockbusters, one of the biggest trades in NFL history right now. The Denver Broncos ended up getting Russell Wilson in a 4th-round pick in exchange from the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, a defensive tackle, 2 first-rounders and 2 second-rounders, as well as a 5th-round pick. Now, this happened, I don't know, less than an hour, maybe less than 2 hours after the announcement became public that Aaron Rodgers was going to sign a new deal with the Green Bay Packers. And maybe Denver got their second choice. I don't know. Maybe it was their first choice all along. Tough for me to come to that surmission here on this whole thing. But think about Russell Wilson. Let's get into this for fantasy football. He gets a win now roster in Denver. He's a proven player coming off a bad year, which I always love, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, anything in fantasy. You give me a proven player coming off a bad year. His value is always depressed. I always want to grab him. So Russell Wilson fits that bill this year. Now, he won't get Noah Fant, who moves to Seattle, but he will get Cortland Sutton. He will get Jerry Jeudy. He will get Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler coming off the injury as well. There have been several pundits, Farrell, that have said Russell Wilson's fantasy value, I don't know how much it changes here, but all those other guys I just mentioned, they go way up. I'm of the opinion that Russell Wilson's fantasy value should go up now too.
You know, this is a trade that raises all boats in Denver, and especially the quarterback. And he's interested. He is interested in proving that he is the franchise quarterback that his career earlier would suggest that it is. He's been hampered by the fact that he's worked with a coach that wants to run the ball, except when they were on the 1-yard line in the Super Bowl with Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. But we won't talk about that tonight. Even when you were at your 3rd and 4th running back in Seattle, the rushing game was still the primary way that the Seahawks wanted to move the ball. Now he joins a conference or a division within the AFC, which is just you're going to have score points and put the ball in the air. So you take a look at all those receivers. Everyone is pushing Sutton up and Jeudy up, and they should. Those are elite receivers in the league. I'll bring the attention to Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick is an undrafted player out of Utah that has been successful. He's 6'4". I love a big receiver, and he caught 55 balls last year. And within this system, I don't see why he can't do that or more in this coming year. Hamler is the guy that's different from all of them. Hamler at 5'9", 175 pounds. Blew out his ACL in, I think it was week 3 this season. So he's probably a forgotten aspect in the never too early slim drafts. And I have not seen his name on the boards, and I haven't seen Patrick much. And I think drafters are sleeping on these 2 players. Perhaps at the running back position now, the second-year running back Williams a little bit high maybe. For a team that is going to move the ball with a controlled passing game through the air and a quarterback that can beat you with his feet. But all in all, things are going to be very interesting in Denver. We're going to have some wonderful matchups with the Raiders, with the Chiefs, and especially with the Chargers. I can't wait to watch these interdivisional games.
Non-fantasy football question, Farrell. Is this the greatest quarterback division in NFL history?
That I can tell, and you know, you'd have to dig back. There was a time, Balky, when in the NFL had much fewer franchises.
Right.
You had the great quarterbacks. But yes, and since we've been involved in fantasy football, it has an approach to this.
Right. We always shout out Darren Armani, who runs fantasymojo.com, at Fantasy Mojo on Twitter. Now he has the breakdown of the last 10 days in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament with the ADP. I'm going to cite the earliest that these players have gone, given that this trade happened less than 10 days ago. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver, 31 on average, but he has gone as high as the 5'10", so the end of the 5th round, which to me still suggests a pretty good value there. Cortland Sutton, middle of the 7th, the 706. KJ Hamler in the 17th round. And I'm going to cite the Dizzle saying this in the chat room right now, and I'll get to Tim Patrick shortly. But the Dizzle centering on the tight end, the new starting tight end there, Albert Okwuegbunam, which is tight end 20. He's been going as early as the 10:06. Remember, 1.5 point per catch for tight ends in the FFPC. And then, of course, the receiver Tim Patrick that Farrell alluded to, wide receiver 84. He's been creeping up to the early 16th round, late 15th. So he's on that 15th, 16th fringe right there. Russell Wilson, quarterback 10. When we talk about this ADP next week, that may have changed, but that's where he's going right now. That was not the only big time quarterback trade that went down this past week. There was another one between the Indianapolis Colts and the Washington Commanders. The Commanders get Carson Wentz and a second rounder from the Colts in exchange for a second rounder and 2/3. Now, the second round pick swap is basically moving the Colts up 6 spots in this year's draft. The later of the 2 third-round picks is going to be in next year's NFL draft. Now, not this one. Now, just to break this down a little bit further, that pick could become a second rounder if Carson Wentz plays at least 75% of the team's offensive snaps, or if he gets 70% of those snaps and the team gets to the playoffs. If that sounds familiar, it should, because those are the exact same conditions that the Eagles and Colts agreed to when the Eagles shipped Carson Wentz to Indianapolis. He looked good last year. Wentz did. But obviously faltered towards the end of the season. We all remember the massive breakdown against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Washington is taking on the full $28 million of Carson Wentz's contract this year. It was a big thing when he got traded to the Colts because he was reuniting with Frank Reich, where he had a lot of that success when Frank Reich was with Philly. And then obviously Reich becomes his head coach in Indy. That never really formulated. And there's been plenty of people that said, we saw a lot of vintage Carson Wentz where the turnovers were fewer than what we saw in Philly. But part of the reason was because he was handing it to Jonathan Taylor the whole time, not necessarily passing it to him, which was frustrating at times. All this aside, this is not a Carson Wentz show. But Farrell, knowing that Carson Wentz is going to be in our nation's capital, how does this affect Terry McLaurin? How does this affect Antonio Gibson? How does this affect the recovering Logan Thomas in drafts right now? Logan Thomas coming off the ACL. And then, you think about De'Ami Brown and Cam Sims and these other guys right now. What are you doing with these guys now knowing that it's not Taylor Heineke? It's going to be Carson Wentz throwing him the rock.
It's not Taylor Heineke. It's not Fitzy. Washington has tried to be successful with quarterbacks that are nowhere near the skill set of Carson Wentz. And I fell for the nostalgic aspect of bringing this coach and this quarterback back together. And it did not work. And it didn't work perhaps in the locker room. There seems to be some fallout still. The COVID, which will not leave us alone. This player wouldn't show the leadership that perhaps the team and the league wanted him to regarding vaccines. There's been perhaps a little fallout from that. We possibly see the same thing going on in Dallas with the receiver Cooper there. So back to focusing on fantasy, the thing that Carson Wentz has going for him here is Scott Turner, second-generation offensive coordinator who knows how to put together a game plan with a head coach that will let him do it. And I think that's what's going to happen with this quarterback who gets, from a fantasy football perspective, a better mix of talent to work with than what he had in Indianapolis. There's a running back-centric game, one receiver, one talented receiver in Michael Pittman, and then, of course, he lost T.Y. Hilton to injury last year. He gets a much, much different situation. We look at a backfield where we had a third down catching back. J.D. McKissick catch 82 balls the previous year. You mentioned the tight end, and if Logan Thomas can stay on the field, it'll be a boost to Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz we got to remember, in 2016, he was the number 2 quarterback taken in the draft. Number 1 was Jared Goff. If you go through all the other quarterbacks that were taken then, they've become asterisks and history stories of players who are no longer in the league. You have to get to the 4th round before you run into Dak Prescott again. So quarterback is a hit or miss situation. Giving up on Carson Wentz with every team that wanted a quarterback would have done business with him in 2016. I think that the Commanders are smart to do business with him here, and I think it's an upgrade for everyone, especially Terry McLaurin.
And I always think too, like, you talk about what Washington gave up to Indianapolis. Well, they could have played chicken, right? With Garoppolo or some of these other quarterbacks that might become free agents or in the draft, and maybe done a little bit better as far as the cost benefit, because of what they have to pay Wentz and what they had to give up for him. But now they have Carson Wentz, and they don't have to worry about all that other stuff. And they can worry about allocating their draft resources for other positions. They can worry about allocating their free agent money to other positions. They don't necessarily need to worry about quarterback anymore. Rightly or wrongly, that's what we're looking at right now. We're also looking at Conor O'Driscoll, the 2021 FFPC Best Ball Tournament champion, coming up in just 1 minute here. The last thing I want to get to as a Packers fan, the Packers have indeed agreed to a contract with the terms unreported, as far as I can tell right now, with Aaron Rodgers on what's been reported as a 4-year contract extension. Could be worth $200 million, $153 million guaranteed. That's Aaron Rodgers. We heard Ian Rappaport put this out there. Aaron Rodgers walked back on that, said, no, those numbers are inaccurate. It's not the point. The point is Aaron Rodgers is going to be in Green Bay for the next several years. Farrell, is there any chance that the Packers do not find a way to get Davante Adams catching balls from Aaron Rodgers at a minimum for the 2022 season?
Oh, no, that deal is done. That will happen. That will work. There won't be a problem with that. Where I foresee a problem, and if I were working with Davante Adams, I would push for this. Where I foresee a problem is you have to get him some help. You have to get a receiver that can catch the ball and run with it and make up yards, a guy that can play in the slot, a guy that can take advantage of all these safeties that roll to Adams' side and free up the middle. I can suggest some guys that won't cost them much money. I could call other agents and try to say, hey, get on the phone with Green Bay and let's get this done. Let's try to go, let's take your veteran player and win a Super Bowl. Cooper may be available. Jamison Crowder would be a great match.
So let me interrupt you right there, Farrell. These are the guys you're mentioning. They're all upgrades on Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, right? Yeah. So you're of the belief that Adams' agent is saying, hey, listen, I got a Hall of Fame client right here. Mm-hmm. But in order for him to be the best player he can be, you're going to have to upgrade the other side of the field. Is that
what that means? And what that means for fantasy players is that if you see other receivers come into this mix, you can perhaps see that Adams will do a little bit more, especially around the goal line, with a little bit less. With the amount of traffic that he gets in the offense, he plays banged up, he plays hurt, even if it's not announced by the end of the year with all the balls coming his way. His body has to be somewhat compromised. So I want to keep that's what I would be doing if I were representing this player, is to try to help this team build more receiver help. And there was not a receiver, Balky, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not a 500-yard receiver on this Packer team. And, drafters in fantasy always in those mid-double-digit rounds are taking a run at Valdes-Scantling, at Lazard, at someone that can pick up some yardage. But if you say, hey, that's a 500-yard guy, people are playing in the fact that something at Green Bay could cut loose for a player. We just need a number two, a solid number two receiver. It needs to look like what happens in Buffalo, where so much goes to Diggs and the defensive coverages that Davis and Sanders, and to a lesser degree Beasley, are consistently open. And, it doesn't ruin Diggs from having superior seasons from fantasy ball. So that's what I would like to see the Packers
do. You're making a lot of great points. I'm gonna give you my prediction here, because I think this could become dated by the time we do this show next week. I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling is gone. I think he signs with somebody else. I think Lazard is back. I think the Packers cut Cobb because they are not going to get a long-term deal done with Adams in the next 5 days. And they're going to have to shed some contracts. But I think he comes back on a smaller contract. And I think obviously Amari Rodgers is back. It's gonna, I'll tell you, and I don't want to rip on anybody here, but I'm gonna kind of do it a little bit. There was a lot of talk when this whole Rodgers Adams thing was, oh, the Packers don't have enough money for Rodgers and Adams. There's no way they're going to come to a deal. You got to have one or the other. You can't. Green Bay doesn't have enough money. And I was thinking, I see these other things on Twitter, and I see the ways that this mathematically can happen. And I'm like, maybe this is going to happen. And then what happens? Rodgers gets the contract. Adams gets tagged, and you have to have the money under the cap in order to tag somebody. And now those same people are like, I don't know where this money is coming from. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, it's possible that there are people in front offices working for one of these 32 teams that might have a better handle on the cap situation than you and I or other keyboard warriors might have. Just a thought.
Just a cap management.
Yeah, exactly.
Management goes to work every day.
Yes, that's a great point. Russ Ball in Green Bay, one of the best. Speaking of one of the best, let's bring him on right now. He's an up-and-coming writer for rotoviz.com. He started by writing the buy low report for Rotoviz in 2021, and he won the 2021 FFPC Best Ball Tournament and the $100,000 that went with it. You follow him on Twitter at DricoOut. Please welcome in yet another FFPC six-figure winner onto the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the one, the only Conor O'Driscoll. Conor, welcome and congratulations, man. Thanks for doing the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for that very warm open. I really appreciate it.
It's accurate, right? I said nothing
you didn't
but
tell
facts.
A lie. That's true.
So has it sunk in yet that you won all this money? Well, let's take a step back here. Because this was an exciting, the way that the tournament is structured, you make it to the final 12, right? And then you got to kind of sweat out this 1 week where everybody's got a level playing field. Sort of take us what that final week was like for you in watching this, knowing with all that money was on the line.
So in the week, honestly, the week before was when I started sweating, and I was like, okay, well, I'm in the final, 48, and all I have to do is get out of this group, and I'm in this final 12. I'm telling my parents about it, I'm telling my wife about it, and like it at that point, it didn't feel real that I had even that chance of playing for that kind of money, and so I suppose on the final week on that Sunday, I'd set everything up on the couch. I normally just watch Red Zone on my phone, but this time, no, get out of the TV room. I'm watching the watching the football today, and how did it feel? So like honestly, one of the biggest kind of moments. So one of the biggest things that did it for me was Jamar Chase, right? Mm-hmm. And if you recall, when they were playing the Chiefs for the first time, when they were playing the Chiefs, when they were playing the Chiefs for the first time, one of the kind of big talking points was, hey, the Bengals, they don't have an offensive line. The Chiefs, they have this great defensive line. And so Burrow's just gonna keep getting hit and sacked all day. So probably not that great of a chance. And then I remember he caught this, I think it was like a 10-yard in route at Jamar Chase, and he just kept going. And I shouted at the TV, yeah. And like my dog who was beside me, he was terrified. He ran all the way upstairs, and he was like, "What's wrong?"
Oh God, you're a laid back. He's just a laid back kind of guy, Bob.
Yeah.
What's the dog's name?
The dog's name. His name is Seamus.
So I'd like to just get a little background on you, just so we could understand a little bit who you are and your relationship with football. Because I understand you played a little football in your time, and where did you grow up? And tell us a little bit how you came across the FFPC. But I can tell that you're deep in with your love for football, and obviously you're having some success for fantasy football. So can you just tell us a little bit?
At the age of 18, I'd never seen a game before, didn't understand it, and I played football, soccer when I was younger in Ireland, and which is obviously where I'm from, and at that point I was like, oh, I need a new sport, I'll just give this a try, and so the first game I was involved in, we're just getting absolutely blown out. And so they say, "Oh yeah, put him back a kick return."
A Forrest Gump moment is forthcoming.
No, the opposite. And so they kick the ball out, and the ball bounces in the end zone. And at this point in time, I didn't know what a touchback was.
Oh no!
So I'm about to pick it up and run it back out, and our team had two returners is shouting at me, "No, leave it." And I'm hard of hearing as well, so at first I didn't hear him. So he's shouting at me to leave it. I'm about to pick it up, and I finally hear him, and just touch it down. and I come back on. Oh yeah, we should have told you what touchback is.
You should have. Well, you weren't prepared for that kind of strategy, but obviously you worked on a pretty good strategy to come up in the contest last year. $100,000 best ball tournament. When you started that competition, what was your plan, or did you just go in and start drafting and let your plan come to you?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. So, obviously, every draft is unique. You don't want to you don't really want to be coming in with this kind of stale, hey, I'm going to do the same thing every draft. I'm going to draft 100 best ball teams, and 20 of them, it's just going to be variations of, I don't know, like 6 different teams. Or at least that's not how I like to play. But I did have kind of like general strategic ideas, and one of them was so in this tournament there's about 4,500 other players, and it's constantly so the idea of a best ball tournament is new, so nobody has all the answers, but constantly trying to ask and answer the question, how can I position this team to have enough upside to beat 4,500 teams within the structure given, and so one of those things is trying to, I guess, trying to pick the team in such a way that if I'm right at certain positions, that I'm really maximizing my chance of being that top team. And obviously, like I drafted a bunch of teams last year, so it only really happened with this team. But some of the ideas that I guess paid off well, were trying to pick quarterbacks. For example, Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow. They were guys where they were falling in ADP because people were worried about the risk, right? They were worried, hey, Jalen Hurts might not have a job past game 6. Joe Burrow, his knee looks terrible in training camp. He could just turtle this year. And so I was more thinking along the lines of, hey, you know what? A lot of the time, the actual knowledge we have about how the games are going to go at this point, even in August, is still very low. We're we're trying to make educated guesses, and I'm going to make the bet that those concerns are ultimately wrong, because I think that the upside of these players at this particular price is really, really good, because you see, for example, Jalen Hurts, he's going to run the ball a decent number of times per game, and you know that when you can get those players cheaply, and and if they're going to play, they are going to do very, very well versus at a cheap cost. There's a decent history of that. Joe Burrow, obviously he's just an extremely, supremely talented passer, and so you know what, I kind of care about the ACL, but for this purpose, I'm trying to beat 4,500 people. If I'm wrong, I won't beat 4,500 other people. But if I'm not even going to try to attempt that, then I'm narrowing my odds too much.
Conor, that is a great point, and it's something I want to touch on later on when I think we have an email about this related to a different position, but I definitely want to ask you about that. Question from the chat right now, and I'm going to rope this into a question of my own.
Sure.
Number one, the Dizzle. He wants to know, how did you come across RotoViz? How did you get hooked up with writing for them last year? And what are you doing besides RotoViz in your everyday work life when you're not crushing $100,000 at the FFPC?
So how did I find RotoViz? So I actually found RotoViz because I followed Fantasy Douche. I don't know what year it was. He founded a website. I really enjoyed following him. I really enjoyed his thoughts. I'd actually read his ebook. I forget the name of it now. And so for me, it was a very kind of easy decision. Okay, well, if he's involved in this, I want to read. I want to subscribe to this site. How did I start writing? So I want to say last year was the first year I really, really properly took fantasy football seriously. And by seriously, I mean actually really grinding it. Like before, like the year before, I would start. I was pretty. I thought I was taking it seriously, but I was a casual. I'd start looking at stuff in August, and then kind of roll up in the drafts, thinking that I knew what I was doing. Whereas last year, starting in about April, May, I started taking it really seriously as a hobby. I started doing a lot of my own research. I started asking myself questions about stuff. I'd get in debates and I'm say, okay, well, like, I want to actually research what's the answer, what's the data, what's the information available here, and I ended up, I guess, really enjoying that process. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do that anyway, just for my own enjoyment, and I was doing it on the RotoViz data and tools. Why not try and I guess publish it as well. And then what do I do for work? So I'm basically an analyst for a financial advisory company. I don't want to dox myself too hard.
No, don't. We've had financial analysts on this program before. They never do. So don't feel like you're out of the ordinary. This is totally normal. We will leave it at that. It's
just such a licensed and regulated profession.
Yep,
you have
absolutely.
To be very careful.
We get it. Say no more. Say no more. We get it.
Falky, you want to follow up talking about a certain Baltimore Raven tight end and how you figured on this game?
Mark Andrews.
Here's the thing. You already talked about Jamar Chase, the big week he had with everything on the line.
Right.
You grab him in the 5th round of this best ball tournament. Deebo Samuel also, you grab him in the 7th. He was obviously massive.
Right.
Some would say revolutionizing the running back position. Mark Andrews, you also got in the 4th round, which is what Farrell alluded to. when you look back on that, Conor, those three players specifically that had such an impact on this best ball tourney championship, how close were you to not having any or all of those players on your roster when you replay this draft in your mind?
You want me to take them one by one and what?
Well, I mean, who was
the
closest to not being on this roster of those three?
I mean, it's almost like asking who's my least favorite child. Like, I do love them all. But of those three, I'd say Deebo Samuels is probably the one where you throw some chaos theory in and maybe I don't draft them. It's a bit crazy why I wouldn't, because the logic for taking Deebo Samuels was so strong at cost, that I'm a bit why didn't I have more Deebo Samuels? Because obviously he's just uber talented player with like this very, very strong statistical track record of being very talented, and the only real knock on him was, we think that with this new style of offense, perhaps they can only support one pass catcher, and maybe it's not Deebo Samuels, but when you take and you or if you logically apply what I said a few minutes ago, that maybe it's not Deebo Samuels, doesn't matter, right? He's this uber talented player on an offense that gets uber efficiency from players that it uses. So obviously, like, the upside was, when you think about it in that lens, the upside was sky high. So yeah, that's my mea culpa, I suppose.
Well, so the way you played fantasy football previously and the way you're playing it now in the Never Too Early, we have a situation where we've moved from 18 in the slim to 20 spots, and I'm curious with the way that you're entertaining rookies in these drafts, as we've seen them complete the combine, but we don't know their final destination.
Right.
So I'm answering this question for me, that I'm looking, much like you speak about some of the players that's taking the risk. I see the talent, and I want to get that player in my team with that 19th or 20th pick that I would not have had last year. I love the fact that you're not drafting from a ADP, and you're not living in fear, and you're moving out with seeing the talent. Have you utilized that skill in your analytical aspects of your life to this rookie class? And if you haven't concentrated on the rookies, what are you doing with that 19th and 20th pick?
Right. I think that's actually a great point. And I completely and wholeheartedly agree. In terms of taking early rookies, at this point in March, I think that in terms of the late picks, so probably round 15 back to 20, the rookies, obviously you don't want to take too many rookies, because then you're not really structuring things properly. But at each individual pick, the rookies are basically you're probably one of your strongest chances to hit the upside, because you're for the most part you're getting rookies, or soon to be rookies, that are probably going to get day one or day two capital at a point where once that happens, it's much more unlikely to get them at that cost in July or August. And the nice thing about drafts being open now in March is so the way I try to think of, like, two, I guess, really, really, really high level, and there's two ways you can kind of attack a draft. One is to try and use an informational edge in that, like, you are just crunching all these news reports, you're analyzing it, and you're getting news better than everyone else, and you're digesting it and analyzing it better than everyone else. Whereas I think that at this point in March, that's really hard to do, because you can do that, but the value of your information in March, in terms of how's it going to impact a game in November, is much smaller than it will be in August. Much smaller. And so the other one is, so given that we know that, how about we take advantage of uncertainty? And so you have all these rookies. You don't know their landing spot. At this point, you don't know their draft capital. But you know that a good bunch of them are good. You don't know they're good. You know that the signs point to at least some of them being good, and that there's a good probability that at least one or two of them are going to be some kind of breakout rookie that you will need to have in December/January, and because we don't know who's going to get the killer landing spot, who might get drafted higher than we want, or get drafted higher than we're expecting now. Some random guy in the 17th round, 18th round, 19th round could be in the 10th by the time the draft's over, or a month after. I think one thing that's really interesting in terms of rookies is all the rookie quarterbacks go really, really, really late, and a bunch of them are fairly athletic, kind of rushing style quarterbacks, which means that they can be not as good as you want in real life football, but very live to give you top tier performances in fantasy football, and I guess people are so convinced that this is a bad rookie class, right? And in terms of the metrics that we have and how we analyze it, our preseason information is lower versus normal, but in terms of actually knowing how that will be in September, we don't, right? Like, these NFL teams, they are trying their absolute hardest to analyze these quarterbacks perfectly, and they're wrong all the time. So, for example, just Justin Herbert, right? Before the draft, and before he even started playing, it was a raw prospect that wasn't considered too highly, I suppose, in I guess Twitter scouting circles, and turns out he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league in his second season.
Oh, he's fantastic. And, Conor, that Twitter scouting, my favorite tweet from August of last year was that Jamar Chase could no longer catch the football. If you recall that one, so right now.
Hold on. As long as you're on the subject of Bengals, what about the one from Joe Burrow 2 years ago or whatever it was?
Oh, that was so good.
He was going to retire or whatever it was because his hands were too small to throw a football. This is back-to-back years.
Really?
And so whoever the Bengals draft early, I don't care if he's an offensive lineman, defensive lineman, whatever it is, the dude's going to be a superstar as long as he is maligned by all the scouts and all the Twitter experts. Like, this guy is going to be a stud. Whoever it is, I don't know who it's going to be at this point. Could be anybody. But that is a good point that Farrell brings up. Conor, you wrote a piece, I think it was last month now. Late February on RotoViz. We're doing so much prognostication right now on this podcast about 2022. What did you learn from 2021 that you put in that piece that you can tease the listeners a little bit,
right?
That really helped you become a better fantasy player for 2022?
So one thing I've talked about 6 times now already, is that as much as I already try to focus on talent over near-term situations, it's still not enough. Uh, and the way I try to think about it is that like situation and how we understand situation can change. It can change so quickly. Whereas talent doesn't, barring injury and kind of stuff like that, it doesn't really. And I suppose my biggest I guess an egg on my face moment from writing that column all year was when just before Adam Thielen got hurt. I said, oh, like maybe Justin Jefferson is a sell high. He's not getting enough target share because Adam Thielen gets all these targets, especially around the goal line. And lo and behold, his situation changes. And he's one of the guys that you need to. And luckily, I had him in my best ball team that you need to have. And like it didn't matter that I was right that Justin Jefferson's target share was too small. It didn't matter because he had the talent that should he get into a situation where he gets the talent share or the target share, and he's just blown. He's separating massively at wide receiver.
So let me interrupt you real quick in your answer. Knowing that, in the Jefferson example, do you think high stakes players or best ball tournament players in this regard, do you think they underrate how important talent is when you're trying to beat out thousands of other people, knowing that anything could happen as far as an injury, suspension, or what have you?
I think it's possible that I might even still. I think
even so, you've learned nothing. You won $100,000 last year. You're accepting nothing. Like, I'm still learning, Bulky. I can't get on board. Like it's all an evolution.
I have a different way of looking at things in the sense that when I think of, I'm very big, and this is another part of it. When I'm very big on kind of like behavioral science, and one of the things about behavioral science is that our brains are programmed a certain way. It comes pre-built with these different shortcuts of analysis, and they were obviously the top that we beat however many other species to become the apex of all apex predators. So it was good for something, but in terms it comes with liabilities when it comes to analyzing this sort of thing, and so it's like the phrase "you're human," right? It doesn't matter. You can analyze things the best possible way. Try your hardest. You still make mistakes, right? And I think that one of those kind of behavioral type mistakes is that we as humans, we kind of like, we often substitute the ease at which we can imagine something happening with what the actual probability of it is. And one example, so to take it outside of fantasy football, is so there's this. It's not a real, but let's say somebody's analyzing a stock, right? They're analyzing Ford, and or Tesla, or any car, and the tendency of the human mind would be to say, how much do I like the car? And that should tell me what the stock should do. And the real answer is, well, you also have to think about how much people have money for cars, how much do other people like the car, how much other cars are there available. There's all these other variables, and it's just really, really hard to focus on where what makes the true probabilities be what they are, versus something that's easy to think about, understand, and imagine, which is, hey, I can very easily think about what Justin Jefferson's target share may be, what Adam Thielen is, but is that a true kind of like EV, expected value calculation for that type of player in a given tournament structure?
Well, Conor, I imagined that I was joining a 6-hour slow draft this last week. I joined a 2-hour slow draft, so that's why I'm looking at. And I see there's a team in this group of 12 entitled Irish. Is that you?
I don't think that's me.
That's not you? Well, this week everyone is Irish, and
I was going to say you're not narrowing it down at this point. Like everyone's Irish. We're all celebrating everything Irish.
O'Balkman is Irish this week, and so is everyone else.
Yep.
And I tell you what, everybody should be is they should be joining us, whatever they name their team, and join us in this tournament, because I love drafting at this time of the year. I've got just a couple quick questions, quick hitters for you. I find myself sometimes drafting more than one team at a time. Right now, I'm finishing 2 up and in the third round of another one. So I've got 3 drafts going on at a time, and I'm flipping between them back and forth. Is it in your mind? Is it better to focus on one at a time, or do you do multiples? And then is there a certain time of the year that you will take a break from drafting, or do you pretty consistently draft year round? Here at the KFFSC, we've got some players that are already – we just finished a live draft here, a Super Bowl weekend. We've got players that are knocking on the door that want to draft again. We have other guys say, oh, man, it's too early. I don't think it's ever too early to draft. I agree with you. What's your strategy about how you're going to get involved with, and will we get to spend some time with you in Las Vegas live this year at the FFPC?
So what's my general strategy this year in terms of? One thing that I'm trying to do is I'm going to be doing more of the kind of higher dollar entry, lower entry number tournaments. And one of the reasons for that is because the tournament structure. When you get out of your league from week 13, the first playoff is 14, and you're only playing 12 teams. And it might vary. I don't know what the different tournaments will look like, but your odds of advancing each subsequent week are much higher. And so I actually remember a lot of people talking through different playoffs for different tournaments, and say DraftKings or Underdog, and basically tilting their faces off because they had this great team, but it wasn't the one in it was 2 out of 18.
It's the wrong place at the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
And the way I tried to like talk to them about it was, so if you're playing DFS, you're playing a tournament with, I don't know, 50,000 people, 100,000 people, you just got to know that your variance in results is just going to be that much higher. And one way that you can reduce your variance is you play less people. So that way you've got your monster team, and instead of 2 out of 18, it might be 1 out of 12 or 2 out of 12, and you're still in the game. And so I enjoyed that a lot more.
Gotcha. Me too.
And yeah, I'm for sure. I've actually never been to Vegas before, but I gotta go this time, right?
2022 is going to be a great year for Vegas.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Farrell, go ahead. Ask your favorite question here for Conor when it comes to, speaking of 2022, the 2022 drafts that are upon us.
Well, okay. Conor, you've hit on some wonderful players last year. who's somebody that you just can't get in business with this year? And Balky and I, early on season, we've talked about a lot of sleepers. We would be most curious in hearing yours. Who is your sleeper that you feel is going significantly underdrafted at this point?
So honestly, the answer for who I feel best about not drafting going early, that's probably the easiest one. I see some drafts where Nick Chubb is still consistently getting drafted in the second round. I don't get it. It feels like that feels like one of those things where the mouse eats the electrified nut, gets shocked, and then just does it again.
Because it's different people drafting them in the second round every year, right, Connor?
Yeah,
it's like it's never the same. Because if you so I'll just real briefly on this. So I drafted Nick Chubb in a couple of Kentucky leagues actually last year, and I didn't. At the end of the season, I was kind of like, well, this didn't really help me win the league. But in one of the instances, well, this contributed to me in losing this league, right? So it's like at a certain point, I feel like once 2/3, 3/4 of fantasy football has been burned by Nick Chubb, then he will become a value. He is not a value yet, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah. So the problem is that I think it's one of those. It's another one of those things where it's like, if I can very coherently see Nick Chubb, the brilliant football player. The problem is he can be that brilliant football player, but the way that his team uses him and just is determined to use him is just not good for winning in fantasy football.
Give us that brilliant sleeper, because they're a lot more fun anyway.
Let me have a look at the.
The other thing I'll just say real quick about it, not that I want to keep turning this into the Nick Chubb show here, but you have Kareem Hunt obviously in that backfield as well. Yeah. You have them extending an offer to Dearness Johnson, who obviously crushed it, right? Last season, when it was called upon, Dearness Johnson answered that call. And then you have a situation where you have Baker Mayfield not doing all-world number one overall quarterback things, and when you sort of turn all that, and I guess, and maybe I'm burying the lead here, Nick Chubb just does not catch enough passes to make him one of the elite running backs in the NFL. Now, I don't doubt his talent. Nope. I don't doubt that he could be a top 5 running back in the NFL as far as fantasy football goes. What I do doubt is Kevin Stefanski and the rest of that Browns coaching staff to use him in a way where they will throw the ball to him enough where he can become a top 5 running back in the NFL. Always have the talent, Farrell. The opportunity is there. The usage is the problem for me.
Didn't he once step out of bounds on the 3-yard line?
He did.
I can't forgive him for that. He's not going to do it. Even on St. Patrick's week. No. I'm holding a grudge. A grudge for a long time. 3-yard line step out.
Yeah, that was.
I think just on Nick Chubb, like there are definitely scenarios where, let's say Kevin Stefanski gets fired, and a new coach says, "Okay, yeah, Nick Chubb is our new he's a new everything back. We're just going to use him all the time." But you're not going to be sufficiently paid off for having drafted him in the second round. To compensate for the risk that you've taken.
Connor, you have any good sleepers for us in the mid round?
Yeah. So 2 players. So I believe it or not, I drafted 40% William Fuller last year.
Wow.
And I might draft 40% William Fuller again this year. No, I think that was probably a little bit too high, but definitely somebody who the talent is as clear as day, the cost is cheap as chips. It seems like a great bet to make. Michael Gallup looks very interesting in the 13th. I'm seeing him. He probably fluctuates a little bit, but
Fantastic pick.
I don't understand how like like let's say even Amari Cooper stays. Like we saw how big the contingent. We saw how big his standalone value was when the two of them were playing, like how big he was to the team, and B, we saw how big he can be when those guys go out. Now, obviously, he didn't put together a complete season because of his injuries, but and then he did have the ACL tear in fairness, but such a good player that feels like a bet I want to make at a cheap cost.
Conor, as far as RotoViz going forward here, we know you did the buy low report last year. Can you tell us any nuggets or any clues as to what you are going to be working or what you're currently working on for RotoViz that might be coming out in the near or distant future?
So for me, I think so. Believe it or not, I just moved house. I moved in today. So the writing has been on a little bit of a
hiatus.
But I will be starting back very soon. For me, I guess this is a little bit general, but I really do want to focus in on that idea of behavioral science and where we can make our brains make more rational decisions and kind of point out areas where my instinct included would be to make less kind of more emotional decisions that we mightn't even realize ourselves.
I mean, it's all good. It's stuff that we're not getting, at least consistently. It's all stuff that will be dawning us on the first time. And listen, it's 2022. We've been doing fantasy football stuff for so long. Anything that's new, anything that's a breath of fresh air is going to be good for us.
And Conor, I sit around all the time asking myself, why in the hell did I do that? And with you, I might be able to figure it out. So it's a great thing.
Final question goes to Farrell Elliott tonight about that $100,000, Mr. Commissioner.
Usually you're asking those intriguing and probing questions about $100,000. And we're just dealing with a young man here that told us that he just moved house. He's in a new home. He's also got a dog, which I think he thinks the world of. So between the house and the dog, I don't think there's any money.
There's no money left.
If there is any money left, what are you going to do with it, Conor?
Any money I have left is probably going into the house.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
All right, I lied. Final question for you, Conor. This comes directly from our chat tonight. The Dizzle wants to know, and first of all, number one, he wants to know, and I'm going to clean this up as much as I can. He wants to know.
You don't have to clean it up for me.
I know we know. I just want to clean it up for you two. How screwed are we when it comes to the stock market, number one? And number two, this is a quote from the Dizzle. Without getting into your job too much, if you were forced to invest this $100,000 you won with the FFPC, would you be buying the stock market or selling it short right now?
Okay. So I generally approach investing almost the same way that I would approach fantasy football in a general sense. And one key area is that you want to have a goal. You want to have your goals and objectives in mind. And for most people, if you were investing in the stock market, your goals and objectives should be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And if you're thinking in that perspective, the stock market today isn't that important. It is important to some degree, because it affects the price that you're buying at, how you feel about it emotionally, but you should be tailoring how you invest by what you want out of it. And if what you want out of it is to spend money in a year, then you shouldn't have a cent in the stock market. If it's, hey, I want to retire on this money, I want to save for my family's long term, then tell me, you tell me, do you think that the Russian invasion of 2022 is going to matter for the stock market in 2032?
Well,
I think that answers both questions.
Yeah, you've said it all right there with this one phrase. Much in the same that you said it all with one team in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament last year, winning the $100,000 and joining us on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Connor, so glad to have you aboard. Love talking with you. Great conversation. We're going to follow you on Twitter at DricoOut. We're going to check out all your work at rotoviz.com, all this information that you're going to have going forward this season to try to make us not only better fantasy football players, but better best ball fantasy football players as well. Good luck repeating, and good luck with the new house and everything, man. I hope the move goes good, and I hope everything is coming up Conor O'Driscoll in 2022, dude.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed coming on. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Conor O'Driscoll. Ladies and gentlemen, Conor O'Driscoll at DricoOut on Twitter. Great stuff from him, Farrell. There's so many things that we could, go back on what he said tonight. One of the things that I think, I don't want to say it's the most beneficial, but one of the things that kind of rung true with me when he was talking about the point when he was drafting in this best ball tournament last year, and he talked about everybody was downgrading Joe Burrow.
Right.
Everybody was downgrading Jalen Hurts. And I think this is a good point to remember for all of us, and especially when we go into a draft not liking a player, not liking and this is, and Dizzle's going to hate me, but this is something I brought up with Dizzle before too, where he says somebody is off my board, right? I'm not going to draft them. I could always find a spot on my board for somebody at some point. Now, now, hold on. Okay. Before you say anything, with the Burrow and the Hurts thing, right? Yeah. At some point, if I was drafting in a best ball tournament last year, I would have found a spot for them, even when their value is plummeting. And I guess maybe this isn't an instance of you want to make sure that you grab a guy that you have that you kind of like at some point in your draft. This is maybe a case of I got to take advantage of this declining market that is wrong, right? That is simply just going to be wrong for the season, and I got to take advantage of that. Now, there's certain players that will be off my board because they're off everybody's board, and I'm not going to draft them. But there is a point for everybody on, if you're talking about like a top 20 or 30 player at their position, be it running back or receiver, I'm going to find a spot for on my team at some point in the draft. That's just what it is. But he brought up the point. Depressing market on Burrow, depressing market on Hurts. He hit it. He won $100,000.
Depressing market on Carson Wentz.
On Wentz, that's another good one, yeah.
Market on Garoppolo. If you had happened to have been drafting when Jacksonville cut Leonard Fournette, if your draft spot had come up that day, how great it would be. You could say last year that James Robinson in the 7th through 9th round was a value, and he proved to be until the coaching situation became what it was down there. The flip side of it is guys that get too much hype. You couldn't get Myles Gaskin out of the 5th round last year at the FFPC, and he had a terrible, terrible year. I had a client in the football business that and we met with financial advisor very, very early in my career. And after he listened carefully to 45 minutes, he looked at the guy and said, "So what you're telling me is I should buy high and sell low. He said, no, you've got it completely upside down. Still, some people cannot stand success. They can't stand prosperity. They can't understand that it's right in front of them. It's laid out in front of them. That's why I love drafting this time of year. There's great players that, just like Conor says, get your players and find that talent now. What was Deebo Samuel when we went to Las Vegas last year? What round was he, Paul?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you right now that Samuel was probably, I mean, like, depending upon where he was
6.
No, he wasn't. I don't think, well, yeah, when we were in Vegas, he probably creeped up to a 6th-round pick, but I would say like mid to late August, he was still like 7th, 8th round. And then he started to pick up steam there. So I think, player evaluation is a big thing. But understanding ADP, understanding market fluctuation, I don't know if it's a big thing, but it's a significant thing. It is a significant thing, especially if you're drafting early, and especially if you're understanding the way that ADP is working in the season of free agency hasn't hit, the NFL draft hasn't hit. You got to sort of suss these things out if you're drafting in the never too early best ball tournament, which, I mean, flip side of it, you can make the argument like everybody's drafting blind. This is the most level playing field you've ever been. You're worried about drafting all these sharks against these sharks in July and August, September. Draft against them now, because whatever info they have or whatever, previous experience they've had, it means nothing now, because now you can really get in and mix it up and take a lot of punches and give a lot of punches at the same point.
Exactly.
All right. That is going to do it for our show tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, want to thank number one, Conor O'Driscoll. Follow him on Drico, on Twitter at DricoOut. Check out all of his work at rotoviz.com. Want to thank Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you. Farrell, I'm bringing this up on the air right now. I do not want to go head to head with the men's college basketball tournament, AKA the Madness of March. I'm not going to say whatever it is, because it's trademarked and it'll cost us a ton, given that we're on YouTube. So we will be on next Wednesday, 10/9 Central. Good for you, man.
Oh, I'll see you on Wednesday, Paul.
I love it, man. Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen. You follow him on Twitter at KFFSC, at JFarrellElliott. Make sure you're checking out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Remember, Draft Masters going on live there right now. Of course, the Run to Daylight Championship. Get in on that. I know I will be in it for sure. Love to compete against you in that, and have a ball here in April competing for a massive grand prize. Speaking of massive grand prizes right now, the Never Too Early Best Ball Championship, which Conor and Farrell and I mentioned a lot tonight, that's going on at myffpc.com right now. You can log into that and sign up for a $25,000 grand prize. The drafts go to the end, or beg your pardon, they go through the start of the NFL draft. So once the NFL draft starts, the best ball, Never Too Early best ball tournament stops. So make sure you're getting in on that. A lot of great value there. Talking about some of these running backs, some of these rookie receivers. You can really draft the juggernaut. That's at myffpc.com. Speaking of juggernauts, plenty of Dynasty Orphans available at myffpc.com/dynasty for sale. Some new ones getting posted there today as well. Some discounted down to $1. If you want to play fantasy football year round, that is the place to go. myffpc.com/dynasty for sale. Pick up a few orphans on there and manage those to greatness as well. If you want to join a closed 12-team league, slow, live, sit and go, best ball options, varsity, Terminator, all these different formats we have for you at myffpc.com. So there's something available there for you as well. And don't forget the Football Guys Players Championship Early Bird Best Ball going on right now. Make sure that you're signing up for that. Free $35 team credit to your FFPC account when you register prior to June 30th and draft prior to July 15th. And the biggest of big, $1 million grand prize for the FFPC main event this year. Make sure you're signing up for that and become the first ever FFPC millionaire. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for listening. We will be back again next Wednesday at 10/9 Central. Got a great working on a great guest lined up for you then. That is going to be a lot of fun. 10-9 Central on Wednesday. No live show Friday next week, but we'll be on 10-9 Central on Wednesday next week. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Your weekend officially